Hi, everyone. I am here to answer an important question, which is, do bad bosses ruin lives? Now, the simple answer to this question is yes, or as I say in the title of this talk, you bet they do.
Smart, compliant, engaged. Nvolvegroup.com.
So during our time together, I'm going to be going into more detail on this very important topic, and I'm going to be answering three questions. First of all, why do bad bosses ruin lives? Second, I'm going to flip it to more of the positive side, and what does a good boss look like? And then finally, I want to end with some tips that you can go back and use at your organization by talking about what can you do to have good bosses. So let's start with the why. Why do bad bosses ruin lives? And let me begin with a story which may be familiar to you, which is that I had a bad boss, someone who made my life bad or difficult when I was at work. And because it's practically impossible to walk out of the office and then magically turn from sorrow to joy, so they also made it bad or difficult at home as well. And it's this story that's led to this phrase, which is bad bosses ruin lives, which we use in a book that I wrote called Build It, the Rebel Playbook for Employee Engagement. And it's not just me that's had a bad boss. Maybe you've had ones yourself. According to Gallup, actually 75%, so that's 3 out of 4 employees, have actually left their company because they had a bad boss. And as we all know, there's lots of impacts of people leaving an organization. First of all, there's disruption to the team, and there's disruption to the business, but there's also a hard financial cost to them leaving. And there's lots of different studies on this. I took this one from a report from the Society for Human Resources Management. And what they said is that every single time someone leaves and you have to replace them, it'll cost the company, for a professional, somewhere around between 6 to 9 months of their salary on average. So that means if you have an employee who's making, say, £40,000 a year, it's going to be between 20 to 30, so around £25,000 it's going to cost for recruiting, training, replacing that person. Ouch. And even if that person doesn't leave, so maybe it's that small percentage of people who stay, they're also going to have some negative impacts on that person staying. And that's on something which is employee engagement. In fact, according to 2 studies, one by Gallup and one by Hay Group, they both found that there is a 70% variance in employee engagement, which relates directly to your manager, a bad boss, and the management practices. So what it shows is the huge impact that a manager or a bad boss has on their team. So even if people like myself in human resources do the best things that we can do, we don't have the power. The manager has this power, and it's really up to them to be able to create and maintain employee engagement with their team. But why does employee engagement matter? Why does it actually make a difference? Is it just a fluffy HR word? Well, absolutely not. There's lots and lots of data out there that talks about the power of employee engagement. Gallup is one of those that's been measuring it for the longest. And they looked at companies that had high engagement and low engagement, and 3 numbers that they found. They found that companies with high engagement have 17% higher productivity, 20% higher sales, and even 21% higher profitability. I'm not sure about you, but any company I've ever worked for, they'd be very happy to have these types of results, especially in such a competitive marketplace. So let's flip it now, and let's look at what is a good boss. So forget the devastation and destruction that a bad boss can have on their people. Let's look at what a good boss looks like and what they can do. So I took this from the book that I mentioned before. And in this, what we did is we did a survey of about 350 millennials. And we went out to them and we asked them to state and to prioritize the leadership traits that they respected and they valued as an employee. And the results clearly show that what people are looking for in a leader, so in a boss, has dramatically changed from what it looked like 20 years ago. So let me go through these 10 things that employees are looking for in great leaders. The first one is to own and live the company values. It is so important for employees to own and live the company values, and it really has to start with their leader. They really have to role model their values. Employees are expecting them to say and do things that are in line with their values. The second one is to communicate openly and early. And this is an area which managers, and to be honest with you, businesses as well, are not really great at. Often what we do is we hide the truth, maybe we sugarcoat it, or we delay sharing them with information. And if a manager really wants their employees to trust and engage with them, this is something that needs to change. And speaking of trust, the sixth trait is that their employees expect their managers to trust the people, so to trust them, which shows that employees expect them to have this trust through communications and in every other way that they engage with their employees. The third trait that employees are looking for is inspiring people, and it fits in well with the eighth one, which talks about helping them succeed. And what they both do is they highlight the role that a manager of being a coach and being a mentor, which is something that more and more companies are realizing the importance of. The fourth one is to own their mistakes. In the past, managers were expected to be perfect, but we know that this can't happen even if they want it to be. And the ninth one sort of goes along with that, which is they want their managers to be naked and visible. So we basically want our managers to be human, to admit their mistakes, to show their real selves, and really role model that it's okay for their employees to do the same thing. Moving on to the fifth one, it's about the importance of recognizing their employees, doing so for small wins and also those big wins, and even just for working hard. Recognition, and specifically meaningful and timely recognition, is really an area that companies are seeing the power of, and also that employees are expecting. The seventh one talks about making the right decisions and not necessarily the popular decision, which goes back to this concept I mentioned before about the whole idea of trust, which shows that employees expect their bosses to make the right decisions. So finally, the last one talks about taking care of their people, which really brings all of these 10 traits together by emphasizing this new role of leaders. You might have heard the term servant leadership, which talks about leaders are here to serve, to support, and to take care of their employees. And that's exactly what our employees are saying that they want and that they need. So I've talked about what employees are looking for in a good boss. What can you do to actually support your organization and support your bosses to be good bosses? Let me share with you 6 final tips to help you with these. The first one is to hire the right managers, the right bosses. Too often what happens is we promote or we hire people who might be technically proficient, but we don't look at those manager traits. We don't look at those leadership traits that I mentioned. It's really important to make sure that either someone has them or they have the potential to have them. The next one is about giving your managers the right development. We can't expect our managers to magically transform into good bosses. We really need to be there to be able to give them the development programs to help them on their way. Which leads to the third one. You don't just put them in a training program and think that they can just do it. You need to give them constant and ongoing support, time and time again, to make them a bad boss today, a good boss today, and in the future. Let's move to the next one, which is to give your managers time to manage. We need to make sure that we free up their time to let them do their job as a good boss, not just be doing the work themselves, but be able to lead their employees in an effective way. Fifth, hold your managers accountable. One way to do this is to weave it into your performance management, your development, your recognition. At the end of the day, you have to be clear that you expect them to act in a certain way and then hold them accountable and create consequences if they don't. Which leads to the last one, which can be a tough one for companies to do, which is you find yourself in a situation where you've done everything possible to create a good boss and they still are a bad boss. What I suggest is to be brave and to actually remove them either from the organization or from the role. It's not doing their team good, it's not doing your business good, and it's actually not doing them good to be in a role where they're not able to succeed. So that's it for me. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this helpful. I really want to leave you with the challenge of going back and looking at those 6 tips that I mentioned, and go back and look and see how you're doing them in your organization now and what do you need to do in the future so that you end up with good bosses and not bad bosses. Thank you.
Smart, compliant, engaged. Nvolvegroup.com